Welcome to Module 5, where you're going to be doing some problems with order of operations, evaluating and simplifying expressions. So I just thought I might work through a few problems. When you kind of get started here, the big key is remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And there's always some funny meme, I'll have to find it, that these are connected together, meaning from left to right, multiplication, division, and addition and subtraction. Also, you might see a B for brackets, so just be aware of that. So if I had something a little simple to start with, 20 plus 2 times 6, notice the first thing that I want to do is multiply. So if I multiply first, 2 times 6 gives me 12, and now I can simply add these. And it looks simple enough, but this is so important that you really get down order of operations before we get into too much with algebra. So let's look at something else, like 12 divided by 3 times 4 plus 8. And this is where I said the multiplication and division is left to right. Like some students will multiply this first and they'll like, oh, 12 divided by 12 is 1. But you have to do this in left to right in order. Multiplication and division you do together from left to right. So the first thing I'm going to do is this piece. So 12 divided by 3 is going to be 4. And I still have that times 4 plus 8. Now I do the 4 times 4, which is 16, plus 8, and I get 24. This is actually, this one's almost kind of like the meme that I've seen before. So be careful with these, and when you get to things, let me get something, I'm kind of flipping through, a little more difficult, like if you have 20 minus 10 over negative 2. Anytime you have fractions, you want to do the top calculation and the bottom calculation and then divide. Nothing really in PEMDAS tells me that, but that's the order you want to do it in. So in other words, I want to do 20 minus 10, which is 10. Nothing really to do on the bottom. And then I know 10 divided by 2 is 5, but I have a negative. Okay, so I need to be careful that I bring my negative. When I have a positive and a negative, I end up with a negative. If you have something that's a little more complicated, like absolute value bars, plus 2, and then 5 plus 4 times 3. So once again, you want to do the top first, and brackets, absolute value is brackets, so 10 minus 5, absolute value of 5 plus 2. I kind of just do all the top together. The absolute value of 5 is 5, and then I get 7. And now I do the bottom. So I see on the bottom, I have 4 times 3 is 12. So I do that first, and then 17, and I get my final answer. So just being careful when you do these, the actual order that you do them in. When they get even more tricky now is when you get into some problems that have exponents. Now, one thing I'm going to show you that's kind of funny is negative 3 squared, negative 3 squared. There's a difference between these. This first one means take the negative of 3 squared. This one says take negative 3 times negative 3. So I see students mix this one up a lot. So be sure, be careful anytime when you see the exponents. What we use all of this craziness for is when we get into the algebra portion. Now, I know students always say, I liked math until they had letters and I didn't understand the letters. And I'm always like, but the letters are just variables. So in other words, I might say age is the variable X, and you might say, well, why don't you just use age? Well, first of all, it's pretty hard to write things like this. But if I wrote it like 7x minus 3x, I see that I have common terms. Okay, they both have an x, and I can subtract them. So that's the only big thing, with the variables, is I might have different people's ages that I want to plug in here. Just be careful that you're only collecting like terms. So a lot of times, if this is new to you, I'll see students do this. They will put these together, 3y plus 4y. Just don't lose your negative signs. And then they'll do minus 7 minus 9. So if I add those, I get 7y. When both of these are negative, you add and you keep the negative sign. So I don't want to confuse you by doing that, because you have to really be careful when it comes to grabbing those signs with you as well. But that's just the way I've seen students do problems like this. And that's, let me get through something where they're distributing. So 5 times x plus 7 minus 31. Notice that there's nothing I can really do in parentheses because those aren't like terms. But outside the parentheses, I can distribute this 5 to everything inside the parentheses. So that's 5 times x, which is 5x. And then 5 times 7, which is 35, and I have that minus 31. So now I can simply say 35 minus 31, and I can get my final answer of 5x plus 4. So you're kind of going through these, and you're learning to collect these like terms before you get into anything that's a little more scary, where we're working these out. Let me show one last one, because I just kind of see it. I'm just kind of going through your homework questions. This has a negative x plus 6 plus 5 times 2x plus 1. You can think of this negative as a negative 1, but as you're distributing it, negative 1 times x, negative x, negative times a positive 6, negative 6. And then here, distributing 10x, and then plus 5. And as I mentioned again, you can group these if you want, but I'm looking at those being grouped and those being grouped. So it looks like my x's, 10x minus 1x would be 9x. And then negative 6 plus 5. When you have a negative and a positive, you subtract and you keep the sign on the larger. So that would be minus 1. There's a lot in here, I know, and I just kind of wanted to overview a little bit of what you're going to see in Module 5A. But always reach out with any questions. Please send me, do that, get more help, ask my instructor, send me any questions you need to see worked out. And the other students will love you if you do that, because what I do is, if you ask me to work a problem out, I add it to our class. All right, well, let's head on to the next module.